being here with us this evening. We have a lot to discuss tonight, and I'd like to be as efficient as we can and to get through all of this together. We're holding 2 public hearings first, and after each public hearing is heard, citizens who would like to make comments about the public hearing may do so after the council has asked their questions and the applicants have had their time to respond or provide further details. Once the public hearings are completed, we will move on to discussion items. Citizen input will be after all of the discussion items are finished. So please remember to be courteous and allow City Council to discuss the items between themselves first. It's pretty difficult to hear in here sometimes, so please turn off or turn down your mobile phones to silent and refrain from speaking to your neighbor beside you. Additionally, we are trying to Zoom this meeting to YouTube, so we need to be extra mindful of noise. We also have Attorney Campbell is via teleconference, and it's very imperative that he is able to hear the council and conversations as well. So hopefully the Zoom works this time. The last time that we had a meeting over here did not, but our tech company has assured us that that is fixed. So we will see. Citizen input will be permitted after the agenda items and after council's discussions are finished. Several folks have signed up. I believe our city clerk has asked if anyone else would like to sign up before we begin this meeting. If there is anyone who did not get an opportunity to sign up earlier, please quietly raise your hand and the city clerk will bring you the sign-in sheet. Although each person by the current ordinance has up to 5 minutes to speak, we do have a large number of people here tonight. So I'd like to encourage you, if you have several in your group who have the same opinions, that you designate one person to speak on that on your behalf. In addition to this encouragement, if you would prefer not to speak in public, you're more than welcome to email me your thoughts, your concerns, support of a particular issue, or your ideas, and I will have the city clerk add your input to the minutes of this council meeting. In no way am I discouraging any citizen from speaking. I am simply trying to maintain the productivity of the meeting. Citizen input is to be directed to the entire council as one collective body, not a single person. If anyone has any questions about their subject matter, we will answer your questions either after the meeting is adjourned or anytime during regular business hours. Citizen input is designed as time and place to voice your opinion, state your concerns, or show your support, or if you are against something that the city council may be considering. We, as the mayor and council, should remain silent during citizen input and not respond if questions are asked. This is, again, the way that the citizen input was designed, and we get to talk all the time, but it'll be nice to give our community an opportunity to speak about what is on their minds and us just listen. So at this time we'll start, and I would like a motion to open the first public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? This public hearing has to do with a rezone of R-21-02 for Dwight and Carolyn Wall, and a variance for V-21-04. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Jerry Weiss, who is our planning and zoning, and he can explain what that's about.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. I'm Jerry Whites. I'm consultant city planner, and I'll briefly introduce this item for you before you go into public hearing. As the mayor said, there are two applications that pertain to property, about a half an acre of property on Price Street. It's got an address of 361 and 365, and essentially what the property owner wants to do is there's two houses on the lot on a half an acre. There's a manufactured home and a stick-built home, and it's always been one lot, but they would like to have that divided so each house is on its own lot. So we worked with the property owner to decide what was the best way to make them fit within the zoning ordinance, the Unified Development Code, and we arrived at the decision to have them rezoned from the suburban residential 1 to suburban residential 2. This drops their lot size from about a third of an acre to, from 15,000 square feet to 12,500 square feet, and they're able to meet those lot sizes for both of the lots if they were to split it. And then also the variance is required because one of the lots would not be as wide as called for in the Unified Development Code, and also one of the homes, one or more of the homes, is below the minimum for the square footage that we call for in that zoning district. So you have a staff report for both of these items, and the staff recommendation is that both are going to be approved. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor, for open up the public hearing to the applicant and then anyone who has questions or is opposed to the matter.
Thank you. Is Dwight and or Carolyn Wall here tonight? Okay. At this time, you have the opportunity to, better explain the reason you want this. If there's anything that you want to add to that Mr. Weiss has not already mentioned.
Well, actually, the land was actually willed to Dwight and his siblings in '89 when his father died. But his mother had a living estate. Even though the land belonged to them, they couldn't, she had the right to live there as long as she was alive. She passed away, and now there are two of them, Dwight and Lisa Owen. And we wanted to split the land. We need to do a lot of work on our mobile home. We've got a lot that we want to do, but unless we can get the lot split so that we can have a permanent place to live there, then we can't invest the kind of money we need to get the mobile home fixed. And the only reason we're asking that it be split is because there are two separate families, and if something happened to one of them, it would be two separate estates. So, they need their land and we need ours so that we can take care of our mobile home like we need to do.
Thank you. Do any council members have questions for either Dwight and Carol or Mr. Weiss on this subject? Okay, is there anyone in the audience who has questions for either parties? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like a motion to close this hearing, public hearing.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay, we have another public hearing for correction or change in the text amendment. So could I have a motion for opening a second public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. At this time, I'm going to refer this back to Mr. Weiss to explain what the reason for the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the very first amendment to the Unified Development Code that the City Council adopted back on June 30th of 2020, and it has to do with the subdivision planning process. And when it was written initially, without going into too much detail, there's something called a final plat, which is, the council's familiar with that term, and that allows you to sell the lots, and until you have a final plat, you're unable to sell or transfer the lots. And so we had the way the code reads now is that that's done administratively. And we talked some with the council and mayor, and we feel it's better to have that final plat process, except for minor, what we call minor subdivisions, that should travel to the city council for approval. And so we're going to propose to change the ordinance to where what used to be a staff function would bring it back to the mayor and city council for approval of anything that's what we call a major subdivision. And that's defined as anything more than 5 lots, or any lot that has a public improvement involved, like a new street or a widened street or something like that. So it's really just to give the council back some say so over the final planning process. And Mayor, back to you.
Thank you. Any member of the council have questions for Mr. Weiss in reference to this? Okay. Anyone in the audience have any questions in reference to what Mr. Weiss has just spoken about? Okay. Excuse me. At this time, then I would ask for a motion to close the second public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
You got it?
Betty?
Okay, second.
Okay.
All those in favor? All right. So now we will start the discussion items. Excuse me, it's always quite the topic as far as our fiscal audits are concerned. Fiscal 18 final financial statement and the audit has been completed. It has been approved by the partners at Bates and Carter, and it has been officially submitted to the state, and they have been working diligently at the same time on 2019, and I got an update, I believe the day before yesterday, from the auditors that they are approximately 70% complete with the 2019. And we feel pretty strongly that by the end of this fiscal year, which would be June 30th, according to them, that we should have a draft, if not finalized, on the 2019. And then they could start the fiscal 2020. So, miss anything. Okay, second, does anybody have any questions on the council in reference to the fiscal 18 audit? I believe everyone had a copy of that at some point. No questions?
Did they give you a target on when 19 was gonna be completed?
Yeah, they said very possibly by the end of our current fiscal year, which would be June 30th, 21. And then they will be able to start the 20. And they should go easier because a lot of things have been corrected and put in the proper ledger, line items on most all of 20, and 21 is the one we've been currently working on, and all of those have been very diligently monitored and made sure that they are correct. So each of the next ones should go a little quicker, and my hope that we will have 2020 done by the end of the year. But that's my hope. So second line item on the agenda is it's Georgia Interlocal Risk Management Agency, which is referred to as GERMA. They're basically the city's liability company, and in the last probably 3 months, the city accountant, city clerk, and I have been talking to several insurance companies, got some quotes from them, and at this point in time, GERMA is giving us the best price at this point, and we can always entertain options again next year, but it would be recommended that we stay with GERMA for this year, and the cost will be $75,402, which is 6% increase from last year, and that's basically about a $9,900 increase overall. Any questions on the liability insurance?
I do. How many quotes did we get?
We had 3 companies come in, I believe.
Yes.
And we had copies of those as council members?
Probably would be able
We can
to
get you a copy. We
those.
just went with the cheapest and who's already handled us.
I think that's one of the problems that the council members are having, is that we're not being included in anything, and, it wouldn't hurt to put it in the box to let us all look at it.
I will be glad to take care of that in the morning.
No other questions? Okay, number 3 on the agenda has to do with livestock. And the reason it says that is because it encompasses literally any type of animal, fowl, rabbits, minks, and so on. Councilmember Crawley, would you like to conduct this part of the discussion?
I would. First of all, I never at one point has ever said I was going to sponsor anything. Some citizens came to me for help. They had chickens, somebody had chickens and roosters in their backyards, and somebody else was raising bunny rabbits in the other yard. And when they asked me for help, the first thing I did was go to City Hall. And I was like, what can we do? And I was told what could be done, and I went back to these people and told them that. Next thing I know, I'm getting another phone call saying, no, you tell them they gotta get rid of it all. Okay? I'm not gonna tell them that. This is what I'm not understanding. I understand there is ordinances, but we are not suburbia, we're not Atlanta, we're not Buckhead, we're a quaint little country town where people raise chickens in their backyards. You know, the roosters, fine, they make noise, you know, let them go. Right now, I believe that it says that you have to have 1 acre cleared in order to have these animals. What I am trying to say is that not to change the full ordinance, but we need to re-look at the ordinance. Because I don't want to say most, but quite a few people in this town believe that they should be able to raise chickens if they want them. People have chickens and bunnies are no more than cats or dogs. That people love their animals, and you love your animals too. So we need to try to work together to meet in the middle. And I would suggest something like put it down to a half a size acre that is cleared to make sure that these animals are not a nuisance to any of their surrounding neighbors, to make sure that they are properly enclosed, and that they are not abused in any which way, shape, or form. I don't understand why we're living 40 years ago. And to my knowledge, there's only been 2 people that have been targeted. And there are chickens all over this town. There are pens in the backyards of all this town. So, what about everybody else? Has anybody here got animals outside and did code enforcement come to your house or know of anybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Can I answer that? Code enforcement was out at Aikens Road. Aikens Road is one of the areas that, according to the zoning, I believe is manufactured housing. And the one gentleman had a little over an acre, but he had several roosters and I believe close to 20 hens. And code enforcement got a complaint. They went out, they showed him the ordinance. He said he wasn't aware of it. He got rid of all of the roosters, and he was allowed, according to the ordinance and his zoning, he's allowed 12 chickens. He has more than an acre clear. He is in manufactured housing, and he conformed. One of his other neighbors had too many chickens. They were told they had too many. They did not have roosters, but they also said they didn't know, and so they now meet this code. There was no citations given, there was no argument. They were very understanding and said they were not aware of it, and so now they have conformed. So yes, and I asked that they come to the meeting, but they declined. But they were so noticed. So there was no targeting. It's based on if code enforcement gets a complaint, they respond. When they respond, they will go through the neighborhood because they will not target one person because of complaint. And they will look. And if there are other violations in that neighborhood, they will serve notice to those. Now, it could be that they're called out for a rooster and they see that there is massive amount of junk in a driveway or a vehicle that's sunk in a yard with no up-to-date registration. That person will be notified that that is against ordinance. And given an opportunity to remove it and, or tag it. It has to be in running order and it has to have up-to-date tag. Another person could be in violation of some other ordinance. So there could be 3 citations or 3 notices given. They will tell them when they will be back, and that is generally 30 days, unless it's a severe violation that's a health issue or whatever. When they come back, if there's progress made, they will give them an extended time. If no progress is made, then they generally come back in 2 weeks, and at which point, if nothing has been done, then they give a citation. So it is not just a one time, it's multiple times. And they are not, they're not doing selective code enforcement. They're not being told that if this one is, do I leave this one alone, or do I go over here because somebody doesn't like them? They work on a complaint basis. The city pays Bureau Veritas to be subcontracted to do this service for the city. The purpose is not to target anyone. The purpose is to make sure that the city is healthy and that it's clean. That is it. So, any other questions from the council?
I wasn't finished.
What? Okay, go ahead.
What I would like to know from the council members, if it's something that you would entertain, as long as the people met those requirements that I just spoke about, which was a ½ an acre clear lot, keep your animals down to, I didn't say this, although I should have. Keep your animals to a minimum, as long as they are not a nuisance, they don't have roosters crowing, that they don't smell, yada, yada, yada. And I would like the council's input on this situation.
Well, I agree with you. It's no different than having your chickens out back in the pen and the rooster crowing than to have your dogs out there in the pen and they're barking all night.
Please, be courteous to everyone here.
Dwight?
This was also brought to my attention, and I have, a couple of my neighbors have chickens, and I went to visit them, and I went to talk to them about the situation, and, you know, it was kind of like a house call, if you will, for me to find out, you know, what's happening, and when I visited with them, I didn't find anybody that was violating any of the prohibitions. Everything was kept very neat. All of the confinement and enclosures were perfect. The operation and maintenance part of the ordinance, they were being fed. Everything was in its place. The only thing I can see is the minimum lot size. Open the door for code enforcement to come in and write tickets. And I really think if our code enforcement is focusing on chickens, we got a bigger problem with code enforcement than we know.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I understand the issue where roosters can be a nuisance. I've heard roosters in our neighborhood. They do kind of get on my nerve at 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning if I'm, you know, not out and about yet, but that's just life. I mean, I like the barking dog analogy. It's an animal. Animals make noise. Let's get on with living. This is going to present an opportunity for the community to work together, work through a solution. You know, if we end up reducing the acreage size to accommodate all of our citizens to have chickens and animals, let's do that. That's what we need to do. We need to take, you know, input from the citizens. I understand there was poll on one of our websites, and 200 people chimed in favor of having chickens. And there were 7 that were opposed, so that's a pretty big number for, this is where we live, this is Barrow County, this is not downtown Atlanta. So I know there's been some bigger issues. I know there was a big issue in Athens with this, but I don't think we need to start comparing ourselves to Athens or any other municipalities because they don't fit. They're not what we are. We are a rural community of people that have chickens, and I'm totally okay with working through this issue, no matter what we have to do to satisfy the needs of our citizens. It's real easy. It's not complicated. I think it gets complicated when outside entities come into our community and start enforcing code on a level that we're not used to. Whoever got a ticket for selling a dozen eggs to their neighbor for $1, that is absolutely ridiculous. Are you kidding me? Those eggs are delicious. My neighbor has given me, I've gotten eggs from my neighbor, and they're delicious. I mean, we're talking about something that we should not be talking about. So I think we've got a situation here that we can work through as a community. We can get behind this thing, get together, and find a common solution that everybody can agree on. It's that easy.
I agree with that. We got bigger fish to fry than people worrying about chickens and bunnies. We have a lot more problems than that. Ms. Hagan?
Yes.
How did you feel, ma'am?
Well, I'm not an animal lover, but I don't knock the people that do love animals. Now, I don't want you to live next to me with a bunch of chickens, especially a rooster. Yeah, I grew up on the farm, and I'm used to chicken, I'm used to rooster crowing. Or, if you've already been there, I say some years, then I say go along with the audience. But if you're just moving in here from out of town somewhere and you want to bring your animals with you, I say no. But it doesn't mean that it can't be done. If it's 6 chickens you're supposed to have, make sure you have 6 chickens. Let them lay all the eggs and write a text. We all but anyway, I think we can work through this. But everybody just don't want to listen to a rooster early in the morning, if they crow at the evening time. And you do need to keep your pen clean, whether it's chicken, dogs, or who.
I do agree with getting rid of the roosters, for the fact that they make noises. But I might add that we do live in a town that trains run through every hour, on the hour, in the middle of the night.
Every 30 minutes.
Oh, God. That's all I got to say.
Any other?
Like I said, I agree with her.
All right. Next item.
Can I say something about the chicken issue?
No, sir.
At the end,
I'm sorry.
I will give you time, Ken.
Okay, that's fine. I'm rolling out here a little late.
So, if you want to get on the list there, she'll call your name. Like I said, everybody should have an opportunity. Losing my voice. Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate your time. Next item on is Blue Line Solutions speed detection devices. This was, I guess, requested by the school board, and the county did all of the investigation, all of the legwork, worked with, and we have a gentleman here from Blue Line Solutions, and basically hammered out all of the details They will be going in every school. They did traffic studies. And if it did not fall in a certain number of vehicles, then it originally was not on the list to be done. However, I believe that Sheriff Judge Smith said he didn't care about the number, he cares about the students and the children, and their safety. So it has been agreed that this is going to move forward. The municipalities all have the opportunity to get on board with it, and in which case there is I believe it's a 70-30 split. If there's any tickets generated for speeding, 70% of it will go to the local municipality to help offset certain costs in the police department. 30% stays with Blue Line. They do all the processing. If a camera breaks, they take care of it. If the LiDAR goes out, they take care of it. So all the maintenance is handled out of their 30%. So I think that this is a good opportunity to add another measure of safety to our school zones and to our children. Now, these do not operate 24/7, capturing speeders every hour of the day. They are by law only allowed for a certain period prior to school, during school hours, and a certain period after they have been dismissed for the day. Now, there's also a device in these that is a license reader. Now, those, I believe, run all the time.
Yes, sir.
Now, where they come in handy is if there would be an Amber Alert, and any vehicle that is on that Amber Alert would go through any municipality with these systems in place. The local law enforcement would literally be able to map where that vehicle is headed and possibly be able to return that child much earlier than, in previous instances. So, does anyone on the council have any questions for the gentleman back here? And Stacy,
Mayor, I need
Whoa, hang on.
apologies.
oh, I'm sorry.
Do what, Jody?
There is one correction. The Blue Line contract actually calls for a 65-35 split, not a 70-30.
Okay, thank you.
Your turn.
Yeah, my name is Cam Reed.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Reed in reference to this system? I have forwarded a generic form of the contract which they generally use. Attorney Campbell went through it, made some changes to it, and I apologize for the mistake with the 65-35, but made some changes, and the Blue Line people looked at it, and between the attorneys, and they agreed to the changes and are willing to move forward on this with the city staff.
And Sandra, I need to say something very quickly.
Yes.
And I would like to apologize, Mayor and Council. I was unable to get this to y'all before I left town. However, I just sent an email to you, to everybody's city email address, with a copy of that contract that has been with the changes included.
Thank you.
No questions? I appreciate your time and coming.
Yes, sir. I live 10 miles away, so this was really important.
Okay. Well, thank you again. Next on the discussion item is an ordinance that has to do with reducing the speed on Broad Street. This one is sponsored by Councilmember Crawley.
Yes,
And the reason I use that term is because it just sounds better because you asked to speak on behalf, so that's the reason I put sponsored by.
okay. It's no secret that people go up and down Broad Street speeding like crazy, and those that don't live on Broad Street don't really get the effect of that. I'm in total agreement, and I believe we will be moving forward with reducing the speed limit from 35 to 25. Gary Venable and I was walking Broad Street the other day, and a little 2-year-old boy got away from his parents, got close enough to the road, car coming. I really thought that kid was fixing to get hit. And I don't want to wait until someone dies before we do something about this. And then somebody said, well, then we'll be accused of policing for profit. That is 100% not my goal. Because if that was the case, if I was going to accuse of that, we got people trying to convince council members to have $300 impact fees, which is taxes, whatever you want to call it. So no. And if you're not speeding, you won't have to worry about it. But you can't get a speeding ticket unless you're going 11 miles over the speed limit. So if anybody cannot see the benefit of it, then talk to everybody that lives on Broad Street. And talk to all those kids in that school. And talk to all those kids that play up and down Broad Street. 2 people have already been hurt. You know, but to let you know, we're moving forward with it. We just have to have our first reading on it. And once everybody gets used to it and tries to understand, you know, the reasoning behind it is on my part, is not money, because I don't get no money out of anything. What I am concerned about is somebody getting hurt, a child getting hurt. Because if it's one of y'all's children or one of your grandchildren, you would be livid. You would want to know why Statham hadn't done something about this before now. Well, we are doing something about it now. That's all I have.
Council, anyone have questions in reference to?
I have a comment. I
In your
think,
packet, you have the ordinance already, that you can read, that was drafted by Attorney Campbell.
I think this is gonna work. I think this, reducing the speed limit in conjunction with the blue line system together at the same time is gonna significantly help the speeding issue on Broad Street. And if it does help the speeding issue on Broad Street and we notice a significant change, we may not have to put the pesky speed bumps in that nobody wants. So, if the ultimate goal is to reduce the speed on Broad Street, and that happens with the blue line system and us reducing the speed, then we don't need the speed bumps, and that would be kind of a win for our community. So I think this is great. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council?
I think it's a good thing.
And I'll add to that they are 2 separate entities, because the one is, although it does essentially the same thing, which is to protect our citizens and our children, the one is not connected to the other. And the biggest difference is a local municipality cannot write a ticket for less than 15 over the speed limit. If they do, and they have a certain number, correct me if I'm wrong, Captain, but if you do, then we could be listed as a speed trap municipality. Correct?
We could issue tickets at 11 over the speed limit. I wish that Joe could issue for 1 over. I mean, they have full range from their state officer. As far as what you're talking about, the speed trap thing, that's a significant amount of the revenue brought in by speeding. If it's below that certain amount, then it can be considered legal for speed trap.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. So, next on the agenda is item 6, Statham Spring Cleanup. This one is sponsored by Councilmember McCormick. To take it from here.
Yes. Every year in the spring for the last, I don't know how many years, the city has brought in a couple of dumpsters. We brought in, usually we have it on Railroad Street. Last year we had it at Casto's. We bring in a couple of dumpsters. We give all of our citizens a card. You know, they bring the card to us and they're allowed to dump. They're allowed to dump two trucks full of, garbage and household waste, and it's part of the cleanup days. I was told by the city clerk that we voted to not have it this year because it cost us $7,000 or something last year, or we didn't make enough money on the metal recycling part of it to compensate for it. But I personally don't remember voting on us not to have it, or I always look forward to it, and I know the citizens depend on that service, on the city providing that service to them. It says here that the city of Winder or the county has one in Winder, but who wants to drive all the way to Winder with metal, trash, garbage, stuff out of the yard? All of this stuff that goes in these dumpsters is coming out of our community. And if we have it here in town, it's a short haul. And it also takes care of, the cleanup issue that, we might be faced with sometimes in code ordinance, where, you got stuff in a yard or whatever. It's sorely missed this year. I want to not only bring it back, but I want to amend the budget this year so we can have the one we missed in the summer when we approve the budget, and then have the following one again in the spring, and get it back on track and keep the cleanup days back on track from here on out. It's $7,000, but it goes a long way as a city to its citizens, in helping us, in helping the citizens get cleaned up. So I would appreciate some input from other council members if they have any.
Well, I agree with White. I don't remember us voting not to do it.
I'm not sure where that came from.
And-
It was in there, but it was only $500.
And I think that we should do it because a lot of the people, they don't have a way to get it and get the winder. We pay city tax here, so we shouldn't have to depend on somebody else to take our garbage. And doing that one day a year and getting all this mess up off of the streets, I don't think it's asking too much that the city pay for it and go ahead and clean up. Lord knows, if you go out through here in these alleys and walk around on these side streets and see all that mess that's being thrown out, we should do it. And I think what White has proposed is a good plan.
I agree.
To do it and get back on track with it like we used to do.
I agree with White too.
Well, I'm in favor of it too, because I got some garbage, or trash, whatever you wanna call it, just waiting to go somewhere. And I don't want to take the wine. I do want to drop off the stage. And I want to help all I can. I have other people asking me, are we going to do this? I've been saying no, but I would like to leave here tonight and tell them yes, we are.
Any other input from council members?
Sounds like you might have 3 loads.
Yeah.
I'll make them.
Any other comments?
Put it on my phone.
No?
No, I'm good.
All right. Next on the agenda is a subject on alleys in the city, and that has been requested by Council Member McCormick. You have it from here.
It's been coming up here in the past couple of years, the duties and responsibilities of the alleyways, the ownership of the alleyways. Currently, the city owns the alleyways. They've always owned the alleyways. They were actually designed for streets. Over the years, the streets have not been put in, and the property owners have ended up maintaining the alleyways up to a certain point, and the city's actually responsible, technically responsible for the alleyways, but I feel like it's time that we start discussing what it would look like, and I'll reach out to Attorney Campbell about what it would look like to start the process of turning over ownership of these alleys, let's say half and half, to the property owners that abut the alleyways. For instance, if there's 20 foot or 25 feet of alleyway between 2 residents, it would generally be split by the width of their lot, by the length, half and half. So I would like to start the discussion of possibly turning over ownership or granting ownership of the alleyways over to the citizens. I know some people have gardens on them, some people, they already doing the job of maintaining this property, and I think it's time that we start having a discussion of what it would look like to turn these over. And I'll reach out to Attorney Campbell and see what he thought what that would look like.
Those discussions have actually already started, Councilmember McCormick. We've kind of handled those on a case-by-case basis. What we've done is and this has been, when one property owner has a desire to take over a part of the alleyway, what we say to them is, you go get a survey, you talk to your neighbor, you figure out what that looks like, and the city is happy to entertain any requests. But what the city cannot do and will not do is say where we're going to divide things, who we're going to give it to as between 2 neighbors, because we don't want to be seen or as showing favoritism or do something that is not asked of. In order to successfully do that, you not only have to convey the property, it must be actually accepted by the property owners. So before we start redrawing property lines for other people, we want their input first, which is why it's been handled on a case-by-case basis. I can think of one specific case where I had a very nice conversation with the woman who owned property adjacent to one of the alleyways. I advised her to go get a survey done and talk to her neighbor. And once they agree upon property lines, then the mayor and the city council will certainly entertain conveying the alleyway in accordance with their wishes. But again, that's because we need them to accept whatever it is we decide. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and thank you for the input. So basically, for those who didn't hear Attorney Campbell, I'll generally repeat what he said. It's currently being handled on a case-by-case basis. The parties can get a survey, they can pay for a survey. You work with your neighbor to decide where the property line is. The city is not gonna play any favoritism, and if you're interested in looking into getting an alleyway granted to you, it would be less of a burden to the city and the Public Works Department and trees and roads. And our responsibility there, we wouldn't be responsible for it anymore, and we could focus on some other things as far as streets and roads goes, because that's where some of our budget money comes out of. So if you're interested, contact City Hall.
Any comments from the council members? Okay, next on the discussion items, number 8, the Public Works Building, future, I guess you would call it, is also been requested by Councilmember McCormick.
I was just wanting to keep this on the discussion to see what progress we've been able to make on the Public Works Building, if we've had any progress on the Public Works Building, on the sale of it, or, I know we had a request for proposal, and we had a request for an appraisal at a previous council meeting.
Well, to answer that question, I have a couple of, I've reached out to a few real estate companies that do commercial type. Those that'll do it, and according to all of the documents, we're probably looking at roughly $3,500 to $3,800 for the appraisal, and that money is not in this fiscal budget. I do have a couple that will come and give us a ballpark idea of what it would take to either renovate it or put it on the market the way it is. And they'll do it out of courtesy. So the first one was supposed to be here this week, had to reschedule. So I think it's Wednesday next week I will be meeting with him. I continue to try to reach out, and I have a meeting in Washington tomorrow. It's a networking meeting. They generally have some realtors done, and I try to see if I can get a couple more that would do. Basically, I think we need just a impromptu, if I can get a couple that say, okay, here's the ballpark, but it doesn't cost us anything, then we at least have an idea and can take that into consideration during this next budget.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to stay on top of it was because of the real estate market right now it's kind of like on fire right now. So I think as a city, we could get the most money for that piece of property if we would decide to sell it and do something different, for the city.
Any other comments from council members? Okay. Item number 9, welcome packets for new residents. This is something that was brought up by Councilmember McCormick. And I believe you received an email that basically says that we are about halfway with those packets. The staff has been working in between other job responsibilities to try and get a workable packet. And if council members would like to deliver them, we could make them available to council members. We could also have them at the front desk when they come in to fill out for water and sewer, and they can be given. So that would be up to the council how they would want to handle that.
Yeah, I remember, I've noticed, I met a couple of new residents here, and, I remember when I first moved here, I got a welcome packet, turned on my water bill. It was like, welcome to Statham. Here's a list of frequently called numbers. Here's a map of, here's Barrow County, here's Statham, it was a very, very well put together welcome packet that I kept for months and months and months, until I got acclimated to this area, the frequently called numbers. And I've met a few new homeowners in the area that they just weren't getting that, so I thought I would bring it up. But I appreciate the work that's already been done on the welcome packets, and I look forward to seeing what they're about.
Any other input on that from council members? Okay, well, between now and when they're complete, you all can decide how you want those to be handed out, and maybe we can go back and find some of the new residents and kind of get caught up.
Yeah.
So, next on the agenda is four-wheelers on public streets. This is something that was requested to speak about. Council Member Crowley, would you like to take it?
I do. I've had some citizens contact me saying there were four-wheelers running at nighttime with no lights. And it's getting dogs to bark and, getting everything stirred up. I want to say it was Russo that told me, Officer Russo, that told me that they already took care of that. Captain News, did you hear what I was talking about?
No.
About four-wheelers, about the four-wheeler situation, about people driving at night, no lights,
I know we've spoken with several people, a lot of times it's young kids that have gotten for Christmas.
Oh, yeah, but, we require people to have, the proper things fitted on the golf cart, yet, I don't understand why we have something like that for four-wheelers, especially with children.
Right.
I don't think anybody should be riding a four-wheeler unless they have at least their license.
Well, they're not up there, off-road vehicles are not to be operated on the roadway of the state of the city.
Okay. He was pretty sure that it's been taken care of, that it's been handled, so I won't go into any more about that.
Any comments from council members? Okay. All right. Now we are to the citizen input. Each person has up to 5 minutes when your name is called. So you have to state your name. I think probably the best place, if you've got a good voice, you can stay at your chair. If not, you could kind of be somewhere near these doors so that everyone would be able to hear you. State your name and preferably your address. You can address your comments to the council as a body, and we're up front here to hear what you have to say, and go from there. Again, if we have a group that has the same things to say, if you could maybe, in the interest of time, pick one of you to do the speaking. At this point, Ms. Bennett, would you?
Mandy, do you and your husband want to speak together, or?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Do I need to stand up here?
Yes, ma'am, wherever you're comfortable.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mandy Farmer, and I have bunnies. I
I'm a mandated bunnies. I have dwarf bunnies. They're very small. And I take them if they need to be treated. And I am also a emotional support person. I'm certified to go to hospitals and senior homes, anywhere else. I'm certified. That means I can go. But because of the virus, I have not been able to go to the hospital or my senior home, Mulberry Grove. And Mulberry Grove loves me and my bunnies. They're just so sweet. And they have to have a standard of cleanliness and have to be well behaved and restrained at all times. And the advantage of a pet therapist or emotional support animal is so many people have problems these days. Because of the virus, they have to stay home, they're stressed out, or if they're working, they're worried about not having enough money. So this way I can talk to people, I can help people. I have been known to donate a lot of my funds to organizations. Sandy Creek, I've gone to Sandy Creek quite a few times. They ask me to come back in the summertime, and I go because I want to educate people on caring for animals. And then I'm also, I've gone to the Statham Library, and up to the virus, I was going to story time, and the children loved me. I would go and I would have the children sit down when they got through the activity or reading story time or something. I would lay a blanket out and I would have them sit down and I would tell them to be very, very quiet because I had brought a guest. And that guest is a bunny. And they get scared sometimes just like people do. And so they were able to pet the bunny, they were able to rub the bunny, and were able to ask questions. So they learned about animals. And my bunnies are very well taken care of. Like I said, they're very clean. My bunny house is a very clean house. They are trained homeschooled, like a lot of people have homeschooled children. They're homeschooled. They learn to be litter trained. And my little bunnies are litter trained. I had never heard of anybody having bunnies being litter trained as well as my animals are. Okay, because we didn't have a fall festival here at Statham, I went to Monroe. I had to pay a fee, but I thought it was worth paying $50 to teach people about animals and pets. There's another couple there, they have support horses, and they like to support veterans. So they help their veterans that have PTS and emotional trouble with riding the horses. And then the animals, my rabbits, I was at the whole bunnies, all these people came up and petted them. I didn't sell one rabbit because I didn't want to. I wanted to educate people on taking care of animals. And then if they get scared, just like people, you don't go around hitting them. You teach them to be calm and calm and calm. And you teach them rules and teach them how to behave. Okay, so I went to the fall festival, and how many other people I saw? I would say I probably had 5,000 people petted 2 bunnies. I took 5, and I had a little box for each one of them, but everybody wanted to get the same little rabbit named Mustache. He was named Mustache because he's got a little mustache on his little face. And then I had one that's named Bulldog because of this little, he looked like a bulldog. He is so well behaved, and I wanted to bring him, but because he's a emotional support animal, I was not allowed to bring him in here. And do you know, it's hot in here, but my bunny's house are very cool because they have 2 air conditioners in the summertime as fans, and they have heaters in the wintertime. And do you know, I usually have babies being born early in the spring because Easter is like Christmas to bunnies. They don't know they're supposed to deliver Easter eggs. They love people. And so they don't make a mess because they have litter box. Whenever they travel, they have a litter box. They have one in the car in the hot chocolate. 1 minute, okay? Let me speed up. So the best part about having bunnies is to help people. The very most important. I have had one lady call me. She said, I have a child. He's autistic. And she made all straight A's. And she wants a bunny. Guess who she came to? Me, Mandy's baby bunny. I educate people on how to take care of them. And then they love the bunnies. And then they become their family. In fact, when they buy a bunny from me, they become a bunny family, and they get a hug, and I tell them to send me a picture every once in a while so I can see how my little sweet baby is loved and taken care of. So, in conclusion, I take good care of my bunnies. I love my bunnies. And I will share them with anybody, and I don't make anybody charge to come pet my bunny. So in conclusion, let's take care of the bunnies, and the bunnies will take care of us. And I hope y'all don't have any kind of emotional problem, but if you have an emotional problem, just call me, and you can come pet a bunny. I'll even bring it to your car, so you don't have to wait to call. So y'all have a wonderful night, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, ma'am.
Tammy, we can't question them, this is just citizens' comment.
Or just for public?
Yes, sir.
After
Apparently, they won't let me answer.
Do what?
After the meeting, you're
I'm not
welcome.
allowed to, but-
You're not allowed to ask your questions.
Right.
This is for
Well, you
public
might have
input.
to contact me away from this office or this meeting. Thank you, Tammy.
Mr. Farmer?
Oh, he's not going to speak. I'm going to speak on his behalf.
Okay, you go right ahead then.
This is my friend. My husband has some emotional problems, so I'm gonna let my friend speak to us instead of my husband.
Yeah, we just felt it was better for Billy, just kind of, chill out back there.
And your name?
Okay. Bear with me, I have
Your name?
my notes. Lori, L-O-R-I, last name Olivent, O-L-I-V-E-N-T. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, distinguished members of the council. My name is Lori Olivent, and I am a resident of Statham. I am also the proud wife of a 21-and-a-half-year veteran. So, needless to say, I advocate for our veterans. I'm also here on behalf of the residents to advocate also for them and their animals, specifically chickens and rabbits. Please understand, these animals are not just animals, they're pets. Now, some people laugh, really, Lori? Chickens are pets? Yes, they are. I don't care if it's a rat, a rabbit, a mouse, cat, dog, crocodile. There are pets, they are our family. It is also proven that with people that have emotional issues, whether it be depression, anxiety, or PTSD, the best therapy is animals. Now, excuse me, pardon. It is well proven by the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and this is what the psychiatrists through the entire United States depend on their research. And research has proven that hugging and speaking with a pet who won't judge you for your feelings or thoughts is cathartic and helps people get through rough times. Pets also reduce symptoms of anxiety or depression, giving people a reason to get up in the morning. The suicide rates for PTSD and children alone are on the rise. Now, these pets and these rabbits, they haven't done anything to anyone, have they? So, Mayor, I'm confused why you want to take these animals from these people. We have bigger problems in state. Bigger problems. We have a methamphetamine use and sale in this town that blows my mind. These are the issues, sir, that we need to be focusing on. Please allow these folks to keep their animals I just recently met the farmers, and I know that kind of sounds funny, but that is their last name. I recently met them on an app called Nextdoor. I don't know if y'all are familiar. Excuse me.
1 minute,
Pardon?
1 minute.
Okay, so anyway, I'm asking you, please, work together, let's work together, and get this resolved. Because what you're asking these people is to give up their family members. So thank you for your time. I also have a, that I will hand out to you from the National Alliance on Mental Illness for your perusal.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Kurt,
Am I next?
you're next.
My name is Kurt Loganrider. I live at 1969 Broad Street. I have for the past 27 years. I know this is a very emotional issue, obviously. You know, people love their pets, love animals. There probably is nobody here could think otherwise. But I'm going to have you look at this a lot more pragmatically and a lot more logically. This really kind of boils down to really one issue, and it's a density per square foot issue. All right, because one chicken or two chickens could, you know, live happily, comfortably, safely, humanely, probably within a very small area. My next door neighbor had, I believe, up to 10 or 12 chickens in a mobile coop in their backyard, and that backyard was probably, wasn't completely cleared, but it was certainly less than a half an acre. It was probably close to a quarter of an acre. Never had a problem. Never had an issue with noise, smell, nothing at all. So this really boils down to how many chickens, how many bunnies, how many whatever you can keep in a reasonable area, humanely, cleanly, and so that you're not disturbing your next door neighbor. Yeah, I'm a libertarian. I believe that you should be able to do on your property whatever you want as long as you're not affecting your next door neighbor or your neighbors around you. And once you start to, then you should be calling code enforcement. And on an individual basis, then code enforcement should knock on this person's door and say, hey, we've received a complaint. You have 1,000 chickens on your property and you have a quarter acre of land. That becomes an issue. I don't know what the number is. I don't know what the density is. I don't know what the animals are that can be kept or how many there can be kept. I don't even know if we have an ordinance for how many dogs you can keep. But I do know this, I mean, chickens and maybe rabbits, a little bit less so, produce a fertilizer that's usable. They produce eggs that's usable. They produce meat that's usable. They are pretty low odor when kept in low density or reasonable densities. You keep that many dogs on a property, and I love dogs, that becomes an issue because their fertilizer isn't usable. They don't produce anything edible. And, or at least in this country, it's kind of frowned upon to eat. So this is really a very logical thing that's going to take two things. I mean, the city council needs to come up with, you know, a solution to this where, you know, somebody on Broad Street who has less than a half an acre of land could maybe keep a couple of chickens. Because if you had one chicken, I mean, can you not have one chicken? I mean, could I not have one chicken? Could I have two chickens? In my backyard, it's probably a quarter of an acre. I don't see why that wouldn't be reasonable. Particularly if my next door neighbors didn't have a problem with it. So, you know, I really think that the city council and maybe that 1 acre pigeonhole that we happen to put on these animals probably was more for cows and horses and larger animals, and we're trying to apply that towards these smaller, less benign animals that actually are, you know, not that a cow is not beneficial, but, you know, these chickens certainly, like, you know, the reasons I just gave you are way more beneficial than a lot of our other pets. So I think the city council needs to look at two things. I mean, you need to look at what density and what animals can we keep in these areas, including right here adjacent to downtown. And then I think you have to look at what the function of our code enforcement is. I mean, is the function of our code enforcement to get a call go knock on somebody's door and then feel like they have the liberty. You've got to start knocking on everybody's door in that neighborhood and start shining flashlights and start looking into everybody's backyard to look for code violations, be whatever they might be. I don't think so. I don't think that's the function of our code enforcement, nor should it be the function of our code enforcement, whether it's a private one that we have hired, or whether it's one that we've actually instituted through our city council. So I think this is kind of a very interesting issue to kind of look at other issues that the code enforcement might be perhaps overstepping their bounds, or infringing on people's rights, or whatever how you want to view it. So I think everybody can be sympathetic and empathetic, I think, to a lot of these people's plights. I mean, like I said, as long as you're not impacting your next door neighbor and you're not causing a problem in your community, I think you should be allowed to do as you see fit for you and your family. So that's how I feel about that. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you can tell, I'm used to speaking to large crowds and or two people on a construction site. Alright, I am John Wilson. I live at 508 Hammond Road. I've been there for 23 years. I raised 2 children through our public school system. 13 years ago, my daughter was born with a genetic disorder. Pardon me. Okay, I'm good. Called MCAT syndrome. Her body does not produce enough level carnitine to break down fatty foods or high carbohydrates into simple sugar to be used as energy. With this, she could either be diabetic or obese. We have that problem in our community as it is, from them sitting on their butts and doing this all day long. So 13 years ago, I planted 1/3 of my backyard as a garden. And I've maintained that garden for 13 years. I know what goes in my food. I know what goes in my jars. I know what goes in my kids. 1 year ago, my wife asked to get chickens on request of our geneticist at Emory University. High protein, low fat. Not only is homegrown chickens higher in protein and lower in fat, but the eggs are not bleached. There's no GMOs and there's no antibiotics in our eggs. That's why I have the chickens that I have. I have a well-maintained coop. I've put $5,000 in my coop. I have a 90-pound lab. My lab can't even get in these coops. I have 12 chickens. I have 6 that are a year old, and I have 6 that are almost 3 months old that I raised from my original 6. Now, I wasn't aware of the code enforcement at the time that I got the chickens that I was in violation. Okay? So whether it was the sign of me selling eggs or my roosters, I've hens. Got rid of both. I only have hens. So I was told if I got rid of my roosters and I took down my sign by city council, that I could keep my hens. Well, now I'm being told I gotta get rid of my hens too. That's not fair. I come home from a construction site on a 12-hour day. I'll grab a beer, put it in a koozie, and I'll walk in on my chicken coop and sit down on a bale of hay, and I'll visit with my chickens for 2 hours. And my wife will give them a clue where I'm at until they find me, and I'm just sitting there watching my chicken. That is a zen zone. Just like walking through your garden. When I walk through my garden and every bloom that I got on a tomato plant, a cucumber, a zucchini has one of my honeybees on it. Oh, Mayor, wasn't aware that you didn't know that, but I have honeybees as well. I have 3 honeybee boxes. And it takes care of the pecan orchards at the street. It takes care of everyone else's farm, flowers, whatever the case may be. They are cross-pollinators. I have doubled or tripled the yield out of my little garden since I got my bees. We put up 350 to 400 quarts of vegetables every year. My kids are involved in doing this. They're not sitting on computers. They're not sitting on their phones. I got a daughter going to medical school because of what she's found out about her little sister and her genetic disorder. And she's out there picking weeds, planting tomatoes, planting beans, processing it in the kitchen, canning. She's got her boyfriend doing it. Go figure it out. Oh my God, now the boyfriend that, and he's made with it. But no, we moved out here for a reason. My wife's from the city, she's from Little. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio.
That's why you have this.
Okay? I'm from Steel City. I'm not far enough out in the country living here. But I'll make do. I've been here 23 years. When we first moved here, one of Eddie Jackson's Brahma bulls was walking down Broad Street. And my wife turned and said, "You have moved me to the sticks." And now we ain't far enough in the sticks. And it's because of reasons like this. You know, we're being told what we can and what we cannot do based on the little acreage that we have. And every bit of my chicken coop is processed. The fodder and the trimmings, they all go in my garden. That's fertilizer. It helps. So I've done what was requested of me outside of the acreage. So I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you.
You guys have a good evening.
Mr. Joseph? Joseph?
This is a public, whatever you signed up to speak about, whatever, it's your 5 minutes. So, whatever you'd like to talk about.
Good evening, respected mayor and other council members and everybody present here. My name is Shani Joseph and live in Winder and we are running a store here. Very nice to hear about all these good comments about local living and the advantages. I heard very good about all these talkers, and I'm also for this same thing. Like already they mentioned, council and mayor already mentioned, like we need to have a consensus and like mentioned. What are the limits of the property and what are the numbers, how many numbers of the animals, and more than animals, you have to put aspects like I heard from here. So that's a very good thing, especially already I heard from here, like we cannot compare the area like Atlanta or Athens. So we still want to preserve our ecosystem and all this living. So it's going to help us for the new generation to come up with a healthy, happy living. So that's what I just want to input. I'm originally from India and still my home, two sides of my road is our house is a river, and then we all breeding all these things, even including cows and all. That kind of living, we like it over here. So thank you so much for hearing, and I appreciate the council for working for the benefit of the people here. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to say, as far as I know, the mayor is an animal lover. I don't believe he told anybody to get rid of their animals. If he did, that surprises me. I think somebody took a little corner of something that happened to somebody on the other side of town and made an explosion out of it. I think it's very unfair that you guys are talking to Joe like he did something. I mean, the ordinance is on the books, were done many, many years ago. And I don't believe he's a villain, and I don't believe he's an ogre. I don't think he said for anybody to get rid of their animals, as far as I know. That's all I got to say.
Mr. Leaf, Lance?
Hey, my name is Lance Leff. I live at 5 Greenfield Drive. It's in Woodbury subdivision. I'm not a speaker or anything, so forgive me. I want to comment on the chicken and bunny issue. I don't have them myself, but I saw stuff pop up on our Woodbury subdivision page about this meeting. I'm like, well, shoot, I do have my 2 cents worth on this subject. Unfortunately, our lots in our neighborhood are a third of an acre. So as far as a half acre and acre, we're not going to meet that requirement. We can't stretch our lots. My next door neighbors, they have chickens and bunnies. Good for them. Every once in a while we hear the chickens when they're laying an egg, they make a squawk, and I'm, wow, they get eggs. One time I heard them squawking a lot, and it caused me to go over there because something was wrong, and there was a big, I don't know, it was king snake, black snake, whatever in there. Well, I had to get him out and took him, oh gosh, a half mile away. And 2 days later, that dang snake had come back and had a crooked tail. I'm like, how does it know where to go? But anyway, I don't have any problems with my neighbors' chickens or the bunnies. They've got 2 bunnies, and I don't know how many chickens. 6 to 10, I don't know. But they don't smell. They take care of their pens. They have a chicken little coop, I guess, and then they have a dog pen area where they get out and scratch and do everything. The bunnies they have, these little girls, who are teenagers now, take the bunnies for walks around the neighborhood in a bunny buggy. It's like a baby buggy. I mean, they're their pets, and the chickens are their pets. I don't get that. But anyway, that's what they do. And when I heard that you have to have an acre of land or whatever to have something like this, I'm like, how can you take this away from the kids? One of the daughters is in 4-H, and her chickens were part of her 4-H projects in high school. She's going to go to college and for an agricultural degree. This is stuff she can put on her resume when she tries to get in college. Like I said, I'm not a speaker. I wasn't prepared to do this, but when I heard about this, I'm like, I've got to go and put my 2 cents in. I don't have any chickens. But my gosh, if they're responsible, keep it clean, they're not noisy, they're not bugging anybody, let them keep their chickens and bunnies. One other neighbor, I can't really, he lives down the road, he has, in the same neighborhood, they have chickens, and I've never heard anybody complain about them, but we only have a 1/3 acre. Please keep that in mind. I've lived in the neighborhood for 19 years, my neighbor been there for at least 10, and they need to keep their animals. So, I don't know, that's all I've got to say. Thank you for letting me talk.
That's it, Mayor.
I thank everyone for their input. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out. Last on the agenda, that closes the public hearing and citizen input. Everyone has minutes in their packet for March 16, 2021. Are there any additions, corrections, or comments on it from council members?
Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second? Patty, second.
Patty, okay.
All those in favor?